Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I, Dr. Neha Mehla, welcome you all in the second session of the Faculty Development Program on Enhancing Research Paper Writing and Publication Skills. For the second session, now I would like to invite Dr. Akshay Jain for the welcome of our today's speaker. Please, sir.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon to all. Here today's our speaker is Dr. Harmanpreet Singh Kapoor, sir. He will take today's session on research methodology and data analysis. Dr. Harmanpreet Singh Kapoor, an esteemed assistant professor in the Department of Mathematics and Statistics at the School of Basic Science, hold a PhD in statistics from Punjab University, Chandigarh. He has earned in 2014 along with a gold medal in MSc Statistics in 2009. With an extensive professional background, he has successfully completed actuarial examination from the Institute of Actuaries of India, specialized in various areas including finance, mathematics, and statistical method. In his 11 years of research experience, Dr. Kapoor has become an expert in actuarial statistics, statistical modeling, inferential statistics, and biostatistics. Currently serving as an assistant professor in the Central University of Punjab since August 2015. He previously held a position at Baba Farid College. Dr. Kapoor's notable contribution in the actuarial science showcased through the published paper and recognized achievements such as gold medal in MSc statistics affirm his prowess. Engaging in research collaboration, he has secured achievement and research grants, including DST, SERB projects on underground water depletion. An active member of professional organization, Dr. Kapoor's commitment to education is evident through his participation in national and international conferences, workshops, and seminars. He has organized significant academics events as a resource person and delivered expert lecture and workshop on diverse topics. In summary, Dr. Harmanpreet Singh Kapoor sir stands a dedicated academician and researcher making substantial contribution for mathematics, statistics, and actuarial science. And now I welcome Dr. Harmanpreet Singh Kapoor sir for today's lecture.
Thank you, Dr. Jain. So very, you can say, detailed this give introduction of mine. So thank you for that. So basically today what I'm going to discuss is regarding that how we use statistics in research, right? So my main theme of today's talk will be that how, or it means we are going to discuss about that what are the tools we have in our research regarding, that means in statistics, right, that we use generally. So I'm going to share my screen, then we will start with that, right? My screen is visible, right?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. So I have been told that I have to discuss, means cater the audience that how we use different tools of statistics in research methodology. So basically, I'm going to start some of the, you can say, summary or say basics of research methodology. Then I will discuss that how we collect the information in real life to solve some problems. It means that we have already discussed in our research. So before going to start discussing my research methodology, so basically today's talk will be more theoretical. The reason that means I kept more theoretical. The reason is that because sometimes that most of the researchers, they used to come to me and they want to do the analysis of the data. But when I ask some few basic questions that whether they have done such prior exercise before conducting the analysis, they used to say that that we were not aware of that at the time of collection of data. So if we got to know such information prior, then we conduct our research in a more better manner. So today's my task is basically that what are the tools that we have to keep in mind by conducting any research from statistical point of view also. That it is not just like you just come to the statistician and just say that do the analysis for me. So before that, so while doing your collection or some information that we used to gather from the society and from other resources, so we have to keep something in our mind that If we go such path, if we have such type of design, then how we have to proceed further. If we are not following those things in a proper manner, that it will be difficult for us, even a statistician, to do the analysis in a proper manner. Okay, so I think hope all of you are able to understand what I want to convey here is that what types of things one has to keep in their mind while doing their research, so that it will be easy for any statistics person or statistician, though, so that they can do the analysis in a better manner, and you will get the required desired output at the later stage. Okay, so in my today's talk, what I'm going to cover is, so as already discussed with you, because in the yesterday session we already have gone through the basic of research process, research methodology. So I want to connect you with the things that we have already covered yesterday. So then we will discuss about research problem, then what do you mean by hypothesis and assumptions. So now from this third point onwards, more statistics things will be involved. Okay, because I want to correlate the things that nowadays, without any information, without any data, you can't, you can say, support your study. So it is very essential nowadays that if you're doing some research, then you have to bring some data, you have to collect some information, and you have to, you can say, prove your things from a statistical point, that is statistically significant. You can say that my things have been done in a significant manner, and for that you have to do the we have to use statistical tools to say that something can happen in a significant, statistically significant. So after that, we will discuss about what do you mean by literature review and what are sources for that, research approaches and design. As already discussed with you, that there are different types of designs, and we have to choose that based upon my study, which design is more suitable for my research, and corresponding that I have to proceed in that direction. So at the last stage, I will tell you what do you mean by population, sample, and sampling techniques. So as already discussed with you, and I think you have already covered yesterday, that what is research methodology. So I'm going to give you just brief statement from my side. A research study in which we begin with a problem or question and end with generation and dissemination of an answer for that problem or question. So most of you are, let us suppose, are dealing with social sciences or sciences. So in sciences, what we do, that means most of the researchers that used to come to me, that they either they develop new drugs, either they develop new methodology. Okay, they want to prove that this methodology, this drug or new thing work better than the previous one, or there is some difference between them. In social sciences, they want to prove that this thing has not been done earlier, or this is a new concept that they have we can say uh, discovered, right? And they want to conduct their study in that manner. So in this, a research study is a sequential process where there are chances of overlapping. Okay, because nowadays most of the social sciences background students, they're now doing questionnaire. That means they they used to take information from the audience, from their you can say desired, or you can say the target population in terms of questionnaire. So they used to keep some open-ended questions. They also keep some close-ended questions, and they do mixed study, right? To to get the desired output. So in which we use some qualitative and quantitative research process together. So those who are not aware about quantitative and qualitative things, so let me tell you brief that. So in general, qualitative means that when we are trying to observe, that means value of some, we can say item, because I'm saying item, not variable at this moment, because some of you are not aware about the variable. So we can only assign, you can only categorize them. For example, if we want to observe in any question, the question says that the person is male or female. So we just categorize the person can be male, female, or third gender, right? So we, in for the analysis purpose, we have to assign numbers to them. We can't do the analysis based upon the alphabetic letter M, F, or third gender. So we have to assign numbers to them. So these number can be 1, 2, 3. So it can be any number. Okay, so now in while doing the analysis purpose, we assign that these numbers are just representative numbers. They do not have any magnitude. That means if we assigning male as 1, female as 2, and 3 for the third gender, they are not ordered. That means male is better than female. They are not so. This is not the thing. The only thing that we are just using this number for the representative purpose. So in quantitative research process means in which we incorporate some of the some of the items which can be quantified through some measures. For example, we can quantify the height of a person, we can quantify the weight of a person. So based upon that, we have to identify in which segment we are working. If we are only working on the qualitative, if we are conducting research only from a qualitative point of view, we have to follow the research design corresponding to that. If we are doing conducting our study from quantitative point of view, we have to follow the research design corresponding to that. Sometimes nowadays people are doing mixed studies, so they're keeping some of the portion of their study as qualitative and some of the portion of their study as quantitative. So it is important that we must be able to differentiate the things very accurate manner. So there are some basic terms that like abstract, a clear and concise summary of a study that communicates essential information about the study. So from the abstract, we got a clear idea what we want to do. So data has already discussed with you that in data we have numbers. So we have some qualitative variables also. So we assign numbers to them at later stage. As already discussed with you that if I want to do the analysis that how many males or females we have in our study. So but you have noted down the information in terms of male and female. So I'm not going to it means computer, or you can say manually we can count at how many males we have in our data set, how many females we have in our data set, how many third gender we have in our data set. But if we want to do the analysis using some tools like programming, some other tools, so they count the number. That means they can't count the male female, they only count the numbers. So what we do, we assign numbers to them. So if we assign number 1 to male, 2 to female, they only count the number of that how many males has come in this study, and they just give the answer at the end. So data is very important thing, and nowadays people are using lot of you can say data in their studies, so to you can support their study. And they do some statistical tools, they do the analysis using some statistical tool also to show that whatever study they have done, that is true, that is statistically significant. So variables have the ability to vary and can have more than one variable, such as height or weight. So already discussed with you when we're talking about quantitative variables, quantitative things that can be measured through some tools. Okay. So variable we assign the name we use to assign those things that can be quantified. So there are different types of variables. So some are called independent variables. So variables that can take different values independently. So let us suppose I want to conduct a study that how much saving a person used to do on at the end of the month, right? So we know that saving depends on many factors, like it depends on the income of the person, it depends on the expenditure of the person, it depends on the you can say heritage income the person has, right? So if my that saving at the end of the month is my dependent variable, that means if is my objective variable, so which variables impact on that variable? Okay, what are the variables that impact on that variable? So those variables that impact on the my saving variable, okay, and they are not influenced by any other variable themselves. So for example, if I'm saying that income of you can say of a person, if I'm assuming that the income of the person has no connection with any other variable, although we know that income a person depends on this experience, knowledge, and other things. If I am assuming that is not influenced by any other variable, okay, so this variable is called independent variable. Okay, so independent variable that takes values independently, that is not influenced by any other variable. So dependent variable is that is influenced by other variables. So when we talk about research variables, so that already discussed with you that variables observed or measured in natural setting without manipulating or establishing cause and effect relationship. So because sometimes when we talk about that height and weight, we know that height and weight they are directly correlated. So we don't do any you can say manipulation. So we got to know that if the person height is, that means the person height is very good, that means the person is very long height, has a long height, so automatically the weight will be more as compared to the other person. So there is no any manipulation and we are not trying to construct any cause and relationship, because we can't say that weight of the person has a direct weight of the person influence the height of the person, or height of the person influence the weight of the person, because they are, although they are correlated to each other, but they are not but we are not doing manipulation in that sense. But in extraneous variables, so vector that not are the part of the study but may affect the measurement of the study variable. So there are some categories of the variable. So I have just discussed you the brief that means information about them. So you have to keep these things in mind while doing your study, right? So operational definition, the way by which a researcher clarifies or define the variables under investigation. For example, how a researcher identify or clarify that which variable belongs to independent variable, which variable belongs to dependent variable, because the researcher has a clear understanding about his research objective, right? Based upon that, he can see that this variable play as a role of independent variable, this variable play as a role of dependent variable, and vice versa also. So concept means a word, picture, or mental idea phenomena. So as already discussed with you, that the idea or thought about the study should be clear in your head. Okay, otherwise you will be confused while when you proceed further and further. Okay, so construct means a highly abstract, complex phenomena is noted by a made up or constructed term. For example, wellness, mental health, and self-esteem are constructs, and they can all be assessed through laboratory data. So there are sometimes we want to conduct some study, and for conducting that study we have to follow some steps, we have to follow some procedure. Okay, like we want to identify the IQ of a person, we want to observe the stress of the person, that how much that means the stress level of a person, we want to identify the anxiety of a person. So we have to follow some steps, we have to follow some criteria, so that thing will becomes under construct. So proposition means a statement of or assertion of a relationship between concepts. Okay, so as already discussed with you, there are terminologies one has to keep in mind. So these terminology are not relevant for all the researchers. Based upon the study, one has to keep those things in mind. If you're doing some you can say qualitative study or quantitative study, so we have to see that what are the things that related to my study, and based upon that you have to keep those things in your mind while conducting your study. So there are few assumptions, basic principle that is accepted as being true on the basis of logic or reason. So as we know that while conducting any study, so we have to put some assumptions. The reason is that because nowadays the situation is very complex, that we can't, or you can say, find a solution for all that means we are not able to find a general solution for a complex problem. So what we do is, so we assume that under a particular situation, that means under some assumptions, we created a situation, and under this situation, what can be the optimal solution to that problem, or what can be the best solution. Okay, so for that we have to frame some assumption. For example, for the implementation of various statistical tools, so they also want that the assumptions of implementing that model should be satisfied by the data set. Okay, for example, I think all of you have heard about this histogram and other things like graphical representation of data. I think all of you have seen pie charts and other things, right? So one can only construct pie charts if your data set satisfy the criteria that that criteria of that means making pie chart. We can't construct pie chart for each and every variable, right? So for that, so those criteria or assumption must be satisfied by data set, okay, of tool. So then we have literature review, a critical summary of or research on a topic of interest, generally prepared to put a research problem in context. So as already all of you know that why literature review is very important, and nowadays it is more stress will be given that you must have gone through a very you can say depth knowledge, or you can say thoroughly literature, you have done a thoroughly literature review for the study. The reason is that because nowadays after this we can say after the facility of this internet and other resources available easily on the Google and other platforms, you have to differentiate which hypothesis is can say for which purpose we have in a literature. A hypothesis is a formal tentative statement of the expected relationship between two or more variables in the study. A hypothesis translate the research problems and objective into clearly explanation or prediction of the expected outcome. So as already discussed, that if you want to test drugs, right? So our hypothesis, null hypothesis should be that there is no significant improvement in this drug with the earlier one. Or alternative one is that this drug is significant different, that you can say responses or the outcomes we got after implementing this drug on the patients and we got very positive result. Okay, so from the hypothesis we got very clear statement that what we want to achieve. We want to show that this drug is beneficial for the patients. That means this drug is helpful to cure the disease, okay, of a particular disease among the patients. So this is our hypothesis. So importance of hypothesis research. It enables the researcher to objectively investigate new area of research. It provides objectivity to the research activity. It also provides direction to conduct research, such as defining the source and relevance of data. So, for example, based upon the hypothesis, we got to know that which tool we have to use further. Okay, and from the hypothesis, we will decide that we how we take care of how we test this objective. Right, means how we collect the data, what type of tools we need for the collection of data. After collecting the data, which tool will be used for testing of those information. It provides clear and specific goals to the researcher. Okay, and as already discussed with you that based upon the hypothesis, one got to know that one has to do this thing. So it provides goals. It provides links between theory and actual practical research. So on theoretically, I got to know that this this new drug will be effective one, but I have to cross check the effectiveness of the drugs on the patients. Okay, so that's why it is important that hypothesis help us to develop a theory, but help develop a link between theories and actual practical research. Okay, it provides a bridge between theory and reliability, as already discussed with you. It suggests which type of research is likely to be most appropriate. Okay, so these are the important things that why hypotheses are very important. Okay, so what are the characteristics of good hypothesis? Okay, so the first one is conceptual clarity. Okay, hypothesis should consist of clearly defined and understandable concepts. Clearly defined, that means like I have defined that I want to test the effectiveness of drug, so I have clearly stated that I want to cross check whether this new drug is effective or not. Empirical reference research must have a ultimate empirical reference. So empirical reference means based upon the sample, based upon the data. Okay, so objectivity hypothesis must be objective that facilitate data collection and keep the research activity as smooth going. So as already discussed with you that when I have a proper stated hypothesis, based upon that I will collect the information in terms of data set. So I have to prepare my tools. That is, I will use these tools for the collection purpose. Specificity. It should be specific to the topic and relevant for general cases. Okay, relevance, the hypothesis should be relevant to the problem. And one can easily test the hypothesis. That's why it is called testability. And it should be consistent. Okay, that means what are the hypotheses that we have framed that can be, that should be consistent. That means if you take different data set, that hypothesis should be, if you're using the same hypothesis and we are changing the sample values, that hypothesis can be valid for the other data set also. Simplicity, that one can easily understand that. And availability of technique. So based upon the hypothesis, we must have some tools to test that hypothesis. And purposiveness. So it means our hypothesis should satisfy our purpose, and it can be verifiability and economical. Okay, now what are the sources we have? So theoretical or conceptual framework. Okay, so how what are the sources based upon that we can define our hypothesis? The first is either we can construct a hypothesis based upon real life experience, what others have already done. Based upon that, we can use those hypotheses, or theoretical or conceptual framework. Based upon that, we can construct a hypothesis and literature review or academic literature, we can say. So what type of hypothesis we have? Simple and composite. Simple means in which the relationship between variables, that means it shows the relationship between two variables. That means these two variables are connected to each other. Composite means when we have a very complex relationship in which the relationship between two or more variables are there. Okay, for example, if I want to say that in my null hypothesis, that mean expenditure of students in a month is, let us suppose, 5,000. And alternative one is it can be greater than 5,000, it can be not equal to 5,000, or it can be less than 5. I'm taking very simple example, and this example is not specific to any complex you say objective. I just want to observe that what is the you can say on average how much money students used to spend in Central University. So I'm making a statement that they used to spend 5,000 rupees. Okay, and I am very much confident that they used to spend some money different from 5,000. So this H1 is my alternative hypothesis, and it can be considered as my research object. This means research hypothesis also. Sometimes we used to call, but in statistics we call it as alternative hypothesis, right? So simple hypothesis such like this one. I want to make a statement that a student used to spend 5,000 rupees, and I want to cross check whether it is more than 5,000, less than 5,000, not equal to 5,000. So it is a statement which reflects a relationship between more than two variables. So it is called composite, because if I incorporate more variables like mean expenditure and other variables in the same hypothesis, so it will become a composite hypothesis. Simple hypothesis means when we want to observe the relationship between two variables. So here the two variables can be I want to say that it can be two groups. Like for example, I want to say that mean expenditure of students staying in central universities, mean expenditure of students staying in state universities. Okay, so there are two variables. I want to make a comparison of their mean expenditure. Okay, associative and causal hypothesis. Associative hypothesis means it reflects a relationship between variables that occurs or exists in natural setting without manipulation. So we are not doing any manipulation here, and we just want to observe the relationship. Okay, causal hypothesis means it predicts the cause and effective relationship between two or more dependent and independent variables. Like I have already discussed with you that if I want to it means construct a relationship between saving of a person at the end of the month, right? So that incorporates more variables. Like I have to observe what is the income the person, uh, what is the expenditure of the person, inherent income, and other things. And so that is called causal hypothesis, because we want to construct a relationship that saving of a person at the end of the month depends on these factors. Okay, so in the null hypothesis, we used to frame that there is no relationship between these variables. But in the alternative hypothesis, we say that saving of the person at the end of the month is directly affected by the income of the person at the end of the month, expenditure of the person at the total expenditure of the person during the month, and other things also. So this is called causal hypothesis. So next hypothesis we have is directional and non-directional. Directional hypothesis means it specifies not only the existence but also the expected direction of the relationship between variables. Okay, so direction means when we got to know that these variables are positively related to each other, negatively related to each other, then we call that hypothesis as directional, because we got to know the direction also. So non-direction means it reflects the relationship between two or more variables but doesn't specify the anticipated direction and nature of relationship. Okay, so now another research hypothesis I used to say that it is also known as statistical hypothesis, and is hypothesis of no difference. So in the null hypothesis, we used to say that this thing is equal to this thing. That means, as already discussed in my example, that whether mean expenditure of student is 5,000. So I use the term equal sign here. So we use equality most of time in a null hypothesis, and these hypotheses are called statistical hypothesis also. The research and alternative hypothesis. So that is different from the null hypothesis. So whatever the hypothesis we have framed in the null, so opposite of that we will consider in the alternative or research hypothesis. Okay, so and most of the studies, that means when someone wants to cross check whether the drug is effective or not, so we keep that uh, this drug is not I can say there is no difference between this drug and the previous one, or this drug has no different significant difference from the drug that already exists in the market. So in the alternative hypothesis, we say that this drug is significantly different from the previous drug that already exists in the market. Okay, I think hope you got my idea. What I want to convey here is, so in the null hypothesis, we always say that that this thing is neutral. That means this thing is not relevant. Okay, in the alternative hypothesis, we say that this thing is relevant. Okay, and based upon the statistical analysis, we want to um, disprove of a null hypothesis and say that we are going to reject the null hypothesis. And if we reject the null hypothesis, automatically we accept the alternative hypothesis. Okay, so as already discussed, some assumptions. Why these assumptions are very important? So assumptions are statements that are taken for granted or are considered true, even though they have not scientifically stated. Okay, because we sometimes it is not possible to give a general solution. So we can only provide solutions under some specific assumptions, some specific criteria. So that's why assumption is very important. So research is built upon assumptions since a foundation is needed to move forward. Okay, so we have to assume that under these situations, how our research will proceed. Assumption listed in research paper may be good source of the research topic. Assumptions provide a basis to conduct the research study. Tested assumption through research study expand the professional body of knowledge. Okay, these things are very important. For example, sometime what researchers do, so let us suppose someone has stated three assumptions, 3 or 4 assumptions in this study. Okay, so what we do is we want that if these one of these assumption doesn't satisfy, then how we can develop a new theory that can be implemented if one of those assumptions is not satisfied. Okay, so this is again a research topic. That means if any of these assumption is not satisfied, then how we can conduct our study. That means how, what are the tools that are available if those assumption, if that assumption is not satisfied, how we are going to get solution under that situation. So that also brings new research. Okay, so someone has framed some assumptions, and if those assumptions are not satisfied, then how we can develop new tools. So that also works under the remaining assumptions. So what are the types of assumptions? So we have universal assumptions. Okay, so we have assumptions based upon theory. We have assumptions that are required for the for conducting an experiment. So there are some warranted assumptions. Okay, some are unwarranted. Warranted means that needs evidence to support, and unwarranted means that without any evidence. Okay, so as already discussed, that why literature review is very important. A description and analysis of the literature relevant to a particular field of topic. Okay, it is very important. A body of text that aims to review the critical point of knowledge on a particular topic of research. Okay, and under the literature review, an account of what has already been established or published on a particular research topic by accredited scholars and researchers. Okay, so this thing is very important. So now further we have importance of literature as already discussed. So I'm not going to spend more time on that. Okay, purpose of literature we have already discussed. So I'm coming to that. What are the sources of literature? So we know that nowadays we have access to internet. So based upon that, we can get more information by single click. So earlier people used to read a lot of books. They used to read a lot of journals, conference papers. They used to read thesis of others, encyclopedia and dictionary, and magazines and newspapers. Okay. So these are the sources. Based upon that, you will get more information regarding a particular topic in which you are interested. Research approach and design. So there are various research approaches. Okay, the master plan specifying the methods and procedure for collection and analyzing the needed information research study. Okay, a plan of how, when, and where data are to be collected and analyzed. This is very important. So we have to finalize, we have to fix, we have to first observe that at what time and where and how we are going to collect the data and analyze it. So basically, it is just like a we are going to construct a house. So we have different phases. So we have to buy a land, we have to do the initial setup, then we have to build a building, then we have to do some interior things, then only we come to the later stage. So research approach and design works in the same manner. So we have to proceed, we have to go further and further by step method. And after that, we are going to complete our research. So what are the elements of research design? So there are various elements. Okay. So we have to first finalize what our approach is. It can be quantitative, it can be qualitative. So we have to see what is our population, how we take the sample, and which sampling technique we will take. What are the tools for the collection of the data? How much time and you can say place where from where we're going to collect the data set, and what are the methods that we're going to use for the collection of data. Okay, methods for the analysis purpose. Here we have decided which method we are going to use for the collection of data, but here we are going to decide which method we are going to use for the analysis purpose. Okay, so factor affecting selection of research design, nature of the research problem. Okay, that is very important. Sometimes some other researchers do research on living beings and non-living beings. Based upon that, our design changed. Okay, purpose of the study: researcher knowledge and experience, researcher interest and motivation, researcher ethics and principles. So these are very important things, right? Subject. So either you're working in a material science or non-material science, whether you're working for social sciences and sciences, resources, how much resources we have, how much time we have, possible control on extraneous variables, whether we have control over external factors, users of the study findings, okay, who will be the beneficiaries of your findings. So there are few research designs. One is experimental research design. Second one is non-experimental research design. Third one is others. So what comes under experimental research design? We have to see. Under experiment research design, we have three categorization. First is quasi experimental design. Second is pre-experimental design, and true. Quasi means partial. So sometimes we want to conduct some experiments on human beings. So, something we have to put some barriers, like we have to include, exclude some of the patients, right? So pre-experimental design, that we just want to conduct a study on the already available information that we have. True experimental design, that we are doing everything randomly. Okay, so that is called true experiment, right? So non-experimental design, it consists of uh, descriptive design. So we are doing some descriptive analysis. Okay, so development research design, that happens with time. That means that's why it is called development. That with passage of time, that your design changed. That means your designs. That means we observe that how your study keeps going on. Epidemiologically, it depends on the objective. So most of the science background person, they use epidemiological designs. Survey research design, I already discussed with you. Most of students from social background or related to social sciences, they now do a lot of survey based designs. They use that. Correlational design means that sometimes we have some prior knowledge. That means we have some prior understanding, and based upon that, we uh, we use those tools, okay, based upon some particular situations. So there are some other additional research design. Those are methodological studies, okay, secondary data analysis. So because we are not able to get the information as primary source, so what we do, we use secondary data for the analysis purpose. Outcome research design. Okay, so based upon the outcome, we do our analysis. Operational research, so how to optimize operations, okay, in any industry and some and other areas. Evaluation studies, meta-analysis. So what we do is, in the meta-analysis, we consider, I can say, we evaluate the outcomes of other research that they have done in the past, and we evaluate whether that is the output they got in the literature, whether that is relevant or not. Okay, and whether there's any biasness is involved or not. Okay, for that we do meta-analysis. So now come to population, sample and sampling. So as we already discussed with you, that population is aggregate of units in which researchers are interested. So as already talked about, what is target population? So that meets the designated set of criteria. Okay, accessible, because we know that what are the population we want for completing our study, right? So that is not directly available. So we have to do some inclusion exclusion criteria. So that is called conform to the standards. So the aggregate of cases that conforms to designated criteria and are also accessible as subject for a study. So that is called accessible population, and sampling means subpart of the population. So sample may be defined as representative unit of a target population. Then we have elements, the individual entities that comprise the sample and the population. Okay, so in a sample, so element means one, you can say one unit of the sample and the population. Sampling frame, that is very important. That means the stages, complete structure, that which element will be part of the population, how we are going to collect that, which tools we will use for that. Okay, and how to take care or how to complete the study in a time period, right? So that comes under sampling frame, the complete structure, you can say. Based upon that, we will take the samples and we will do all the operations and other things. Sampling error means that it happens that while doing sampling, we conduct some errors. Sometimes it happens that interviewer, they do some mistakes. Sometimes responded, they don't respond. Okay, so there are some errors are there. So those errors are called sampling errors. So it can be non-sampling errors also there. Okay, so I will tell you the difference between sampling error and non-sampling error. Sampling bias. So sometimes we opt such sampling techniques that has some biasness also. For example, if I want to conduct some study and I pick students, that means I pick some of the respondent based upon my convenience, based upon my I can say uh, some relationship with them. So that lead to bias to my study. So I select some other respondent as per my convenience, as those are in my circles also. So that sampling is not a good sampling method. So we will discuss about under which situation, which sampling method we have to opt. So sampling plan. That means which sampling plan we will follow. Okay, I will discuss about them. So purpose of sampling, as already discussed with you, that it is very difficult for us to do the study, okay, for the whole population. That means we are not going to uh, approach, it is very difficult to collect information from each and every individual of the population. Okay, so sometimes it is very beneficial to take sample and complete the study. Okay, and it is sometimes not feasible because if you are dealing with the non-living objects, so it is very difficult to uh, get all the information from the elements of a population. So that's why it is better to go with sampling. So purpose of sampling, it is very economical. So it helps to improve the quality of data. So it also provides quick study results, right? Because it is very easy to do the analysis on the sample as compared to the population. And because if someone has taken a sample from the population in very you can say in such a manner that that sample represents the whole population, so that gives you very good result and accurate result. So these are the characteristics of good sample, that it should be representative of the whole population. It should be free from bias or errors. That while taking sample from the population, so there should not be any biasness. Okay, so which element you are going to incorporate in the sample, that should be error free, that should be bias free, no substitution and incompleteness is there. Appropriate sample is again there. That means that whatever sample that you have considered in your study, that should be good one. Okay, so under sampling process we have these following steps: identifying and defining the target population, that's already clear; describing the accessible population and ensuring sampling. So we have a clear thought that what is our population and how we are going to take a sample, specifying the sampling unit. Okay, for example, you want to conduct a study on women's, right? So so we have to specify that we have to collect only those areas where women are there. Somewhere if there are no women are there, so how we are going to take that part as part of the population? So it must be that I'm taking very simple example of women. So if we take a very simple example like for the drugs, so we are not going to take each and every individual in our population. So we are going to take only those elements in the population, those who are affected with a particular type of disease. So that can be used for the you can say to test whether that drug is beneficial for those patients or not. specifying sampling selection method. So sampling selection method means which sampling tool we are going to use to take the sample. Then we have to determine the sample size. Sample size means how many samples we are going to take. That is n. It can be how the value can be 10, value can be 20. So we are not going to make a rough statement that we are going to take 10 samples, we are going to 20 samples. So there is specific method is there in the literature. Based upon that, we will determine the
Excuse me,
sample
sir.
size. Yes.
Can you show how to determine the sample size?
Yes. I have
And one more question. How do we come to know about the total population? Suppose
basically
I'm talking about,
basic.
I'm doing a study on Tata Click.
Mm-hmm.
How I will come to know its total population?
So basically, there are tools available. If you do not know the entire population, then also we can determine the sample size. So we can say that population is indefinite, and it will gives you sample size. That if the population is not known to us, then how? Then in that situation also, we will just give an estimate that our study has such so much significance on that, and based upon that, we will determine sample size. So it is not always possible that you must know the exact number of population. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I will show the link also, and I will tell you that how you can determine
Sir,
sample size.
can you please show the formula here to determine the sample size? How to
Basically,
determine the sample size?
basically the formula I can show, but I have already incorporated one link here that helps you to directly determine the sample size. So let me show you because you are asking that thing at the stage. Okay, let me see whether it works here or not. Okay. Actually, I put some link here for you that can be used for, but it is not working. Let me see why. Okay, it is working. So basically, there are calculators available. Okay, using that, you can determine the your sample size also. The formula, I'm not, so I know that there are various formulas, but is basically for those you must be aware about the mathematics behind that. That's why I'm not going to disclose those things, but I am going to give you the very simple thing that using these things you can determine the sample size. Okay. I think all of you have some idea about confidence interval, margin of error, population proportions. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? I think someone has asked me that how to determine sample size. So basically, it is already written here that leave blank if unlimited population size is there. If you do not know the sample this population size, then you can keep it blank. And if I'm going to execute this command, so it is showing that the sample size required under this situation is 385. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what is given here. Confidence level means that how much confidence we want to say that I want 95% confidence, I want 99% confidence, I want 90% confidence, and how much error we want in our study. Okay, and if you do not know that the prevalence rate of your study, that means if you are not sure that if you want to do some study and the portion is not known to you, then you can keep 50%. And based upon that, you can determine the sample size.
Sir, can you repeat it?
So
50%?
50% means population proportion. So a population proportion describe a percentage of value associated. So I'm going to tell you that they have example here. So for example, if you're not sure that how much proportions of your required, that means uh, objective variables have in the population. So if you're not very much sure that, so for example, that in a study, I'm taking very rough example here that you want to observe that how many skilled can say persons we have in the workforce, right? So if you're not very much sure that how many skilled workforce we have in the total workforce, so you can give 50%, because if you have some idea from the literature review and other studies, you can put that value that it can be 20%, it can be 30%. But if you're not very much sure about that, then keep it 50%. Okay.
Sir, I'm still not clear with this population proportion.
Okay. So basically, like you want to conduct a study that in any country, that what is the on average skilled workforce is there, right? So you want to say that 60% workforce is skilled one or not. So you have made this hypothesis. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, if you are very much sure that whatever the hypothesis that you have framed, that is based upon some evidence, some proof. So you can put 60% here. Okay. If you are not very much sure that this hypothesis is based upon very strong evidence, then you can put at 50%, and based upon that, your sample size will be derived corresponding to that. Is it clear or not? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you're not sure about anything, that so basically so my research objective here is that I want to see that how many skilled persons we have in our population, or how many skills person we have. So if you have some a good estimate for that, you can put that value under population proportion. If you're not very much sure about that, you can keep 50%. 50% means half. 50%, that means half chances are there that they are skilled, half it is not skilled, right? Okay, I think if you still have query, you can ask me. Should I continue with the topic?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So I'm now skipping some other things because it means we have less time for that. So factor influencing sampling process, these are the things that influence the sampling process, nature of the investigator and other things. So I'm more focusing upon what are the sampling techniques we have in our literature. So as already discussed earlier, that we segregate our sampling technique into two major branches. One is called probabilistic sampling, and second one is called non-probability sampling. So under probabilistic or probability sampling, what we have, the first approach is called simple random sampling. Simple random sampling means, so let us suppose you have 100 units, okay, or you can say 1 lakh population, okay, and you want to select some sample size of 50, as we already discussed that this 50 is fixed using some statistical tool. Okay, and now how we are going to take the samples, 50 samples among this 1 lakh population. Okay, so we can use some random number, or we can use some tables, we can use some other method, or we can just put some values 2, 3, and 5. Okay, so these values either you can get from your even from your calculators also. So when you type random, they just give you random numbers. So you can choose these random numbers, and based upon that, you can collect those respondent as a part of population. So this technique is called simple random sampling. So we select the respondent without any you can say hurdle. That's why it is called simple, because we are selecting them randomly. That's why it is called random. And sampling, as already named, it is stratified random sampling. So in stratified random sampling, so for example, if you want to conduct a study regarding yield of a crop, okay, you want to observe the yield of a crop, so in a particular state, right? So we know that state is a bigger geographical area, so it has district within them. So what we do is we consider that each district has a homogeneous land, right? So what we do is we consider these districts as different status. Status means group of observation. Under each district we have different villages also. Okay, so we consider these districts as status, and we collect the information. We take a random sample again from each strata, and we study each strata independently of it. Okay, so stratified random sampling is applicable when we have heterogeneous population, and we convert our heterogeneous population into small groups. Those are homogeneous within themselves. Okay, and we conduct our study within these strata only, and we derive the result for each strata independently. Systematic sampling means, so let us suppose if I come to this example again, that I have 1 lakh population, and this population belongs to my objective. And what I do is I select the first population using random number derived from the calculator. So from the calculator, I got number 10, right? And I pick the person whose number is 10. That means who's assigned 10 value. So for in the systematic sampling, what I do is I will not derive the second number from the calculator. What I do is I already fix some value. That means if any person, that means is any person is selected from this population, it can be 10 or 15, right? I will select the next person who is 5 digit apart from this person. Okay, for example, I have selected 10 as my first sample. So I will select 15 as my second element of sample. I will select 20 as my third element of sample, and so on. Sorry. And so on. I will complete my sample. That means I will collect the whole sample. And how many observation I'm going to select? I'm going to select 50. So how I will decide this gap? So we have method for that. So based upon that, you will see that how many units you will take from the first unit. So we will do this study in such a manner that all units will be covered. That means all units from 1 to 1 lakh will be covered in such a manner that they have equal width. Okay. So the second is called cluster multi-stage sampling. So let me tell you what is cluster multi-stage sampling. So let us suppose you want to conduct a study that how many employed person is there in NCR. Okay, how many employed persons are there whose income is 1 lakh in NCR. Okay, as we know that in NCR that is very we have very heterogeneous population, because most of the person they belongs to they come from different states to settle down there, right? So we have to identify that what is a major reason that those employees are getting more than 1 lakh rupee as a salary. So we are not going to we are not able to segregate. We are not able to separate those individuals into different strata. So what we do is we study them in a clusters. So what we do, we consider one, you can say, one portion of it of Delhi's, you can say, NCR region as one cluster. We consider second portion of that section as a second cluster. Although those observations, they are not homogeneous within themselves, but they are heterogeneous with themselves, but they are closely attached. So for example, if I'm talking about that some roads in Delhi, so most they are very, you can say, that is called elite class areas. Some other routes they are called not very good normal persons staying there, right? So based upon the area, we segregate our population, and those are called clusters. And we study the clusters. That means we study the elements of clusters. Okay. So the second is called non-probabilistic sampling. So in which, from the name, you got an idea that in the non-probability sampling, so we are not taking the elements with some probability. We are taking those as our convenience. Okay, so that's for purposive sampling. For example, if I want to select some students from the class, okay, to do some tasks, what I do is I will only select those students, those I assume that they are capable enough to those tasks, right? So those that sampling is called purposive sampling. Convenient sampling, so I want to conduct some study, so I will choose those area in which I am more comfortable. Okay, consecutive sampling, I have selected one person and I will select the second person, either his friend or other person. So that is called consecutive sampling. Quota sampling, for example, I want to conduct a study in different villages. Okay, so what I do is I fix some numbers that I will select 10 persons from first village, I will select 10% from the second village, and so on. Okay, that is called quota sampling. So what is the drawbacks of non-probabilistic sampling? That here we introducing some biasness. So we are saying that we do some study based upon our convenience, that leads some biasness. So those biasness will hamper our final results also. Okay, so as already discussed about random sampling, so in which we select the units using random procedure, usually associated with quantitative data analysis and collection tools. So gives every individual in a population an equal chance of being selected. So in this probability sampling, so whatever the elements we have in a population, we are giving equal weightage, right? So we do not know in advance which element can, this member of the population can be part of the sampling. Okay, we do not know in advance, but while doing the technique, while adopting the technique of sampling, that person got involved in the population or not, sample or not, that we got to know at the later stage. Has more clearly defined selection procedures. Okay, and we have a complete sampling frame for that. Allow for an estimate of sampling error. Okay, sampling error means that what are the errors we have done by conducting those samples. So what are the purpose of random sampling? As already discussed in the that it helps us to get the information without any biasness, and we do not know which element of the population will be part of the sample. Okay. How to choose a sample? As already discussed, we start by identifying, naming or numbering all the units in the population. We number them, and we do some, we can say, we already have some random numbers, and we choose the element of the population based upon those random numbers. So basically, let us suppose we have 100 households in a village. We number them from 1 to 100. And from the random number table and other techniques, we got some random numbers. Like we are going to select these households for a sample of size 5. Okay, so we will pick only those households, those have, so those we have allotted these numbers. Okay, selecting units, as already discussed, that we can select the units using simple random sampling, systematic sampling, and already explained to you how this sampling techniques are different from each other. Stratified random sampling. Okay, so when to use random sampling, this is very important. So when we have large scale data set and we want to conduct a large study, and it is not very difficult for us to assign units to them and take samples from them, and we are very capable, we have very good tools with us, we have very good team, we have time, resources, money with us, for that we can use random sampling. Okay, so non-random sampling, so in which we use non-random procedures. This is less formal, so it is mostly be associated with qualitative data collection and analysis, because when we have to take responses from the for any study, in terms of questionnaire, in terms of you can say interviews, so we approach the persons, based upon our, you can say, convenience, sometimes as per our, you can say, some connections also. Okay, so involves a more focused and deliberate sampling within a population. Examples include convenient, purposive, and quota sampling. So convenient are already from the name, as per our convenience, as per our purposiveness, as per quota. Quota means we fix some value that we are going to select this number of units from one place, this number of units from second place, and so on. So that is called quota. We fix figures for each specific locations. So non-random sampling, that is very less formal. Okay, and sometimes we have some drawbacks of non-random sampling because it incorporates subjectiveness. That's why it has some drawbacks. I'm coming to. Okay, so now coming to appropriate sample size. So often researchers face the problem of deciding number of observation, that is sample size, from population that represent the population, right? So the chosen sample size greatly influence the validity of finding. So sometimes how much this sample size we have to take. So that is very important thing. So in qualitative study, the sample size largely depend on several purposes of the study, the quality of the informants, and the type of sampling strategy used. It is better to choose bigger sample size to get more accurate results. So there is a very common saying that when we have large sample size, so let us suppose this is our population. So this is our sample size. So when we are going to take more sample size, so whatever the result that we got from these samples, okay, that approximately converts to the population. That means when we have large sample size, so whatever the results we got from the sample, that is almost equivalent to the results of the population. That's why it always says that we need large sample size. But the drawback is that if we take all the elements of the population, that means that is equivalent to the population, that means we are doing census, then why we have to do why we have to take samples? Then it is good to study the whole population. That is again a good thing. But the drawback is that while study each and every element of the population, it is very difficult. It is challenging also because it consists of time, it consists of cost involved. So what should be the sample size in that scenario? For that, we have to consider several things. So that is how much budget we have and how many resources we have, the number of subgroups can be analyzed, how much time we have, and how we are going to complete the study within a particular time frame. The variation within a population of the variable being tested, how much variation we have in the population. If we have more variation, we have to take more sample. If we observe less variation, then we have to take less sample. That means more from the less sample, we are able to get the same result. Okay, if the variation is very less. Okay, if the variation very high, then we have to go for more sample. The desired level of confidence. Okay, so we determine the variation in mathematical symbol as sigma square or sigma as standard deviation. I want to keep this presentation less mathematical because maybe many of you are not aware about this terminology. So I'm going to discuss these things in simple manner. That variability means that if let us suppose, so we can easily assess what others are doing. Okay, so now this literature is very also for important because whatever the thoughts that you have in your head, right, someone may have done that thing earlier also. So in that case, your thought, it means whatever you want to conduct in future, that is not considered as a good, that is because it is considered a duplicate thing because someone has already completed that work that you are already thinking for. So it is very important to conduct a thorough literature review because if you are not doing this literature review, then what will happen is you started working on some project or some work, and at the middle of the stage, you got to know that this thing is already done by someone. So most of your time that you can spend for the preparation of this thing, that is already be wasted. Okay, so what are the limitations, restriction in a study that may decrease the credibility and generalization of the research finding? So as already discussed with you that we are not able to provide general solution to all the to any problem. Okay, we are just trying to give you optimum solution to the problem under some assumptions or some conditions. So that problem, that means this thing can also brings a limitation to the study. So when we have high limitation, that means when we can only say that my this result or this technique will only be applicable in some particular situation, so that brings the that means decrease in the credibility and generalization of the research finding. So when we have less limitation, then that thing will be applicable at more general platform, then it is can be that study can be considered as a good research. So manipulation means sometime to get a desired result, right? So what some of the researchers do, they do some modification the experiment. So they want because they want a desired result, right? So that is called manipulation. So intervention or treatment introduced by the researcher in an experiment or quasi-experimental study. Okay, so now come to population. I think all of you are very much aware about the term population, very much confirmed. That means this thing is already clear in your head what is population. But although I'm going to state it again, so population means that for a specific objective, that means what are the variables, what are the components that comes under that study. So the entire set of individual or objects have some common characteristics. Okay, have some common characteristics selected for a research study. So for that we have two major classification of population. The first is called target population, the entire population in which the researcher are interested and to which they would like to generalize a research find. Okay, so that is very much clear that target population means the entire population in which researcher, that means the person is interested and they want to generalize the research findings. So either the person can bring new findings or they want to extend the findings of others. That means if whatever the result that someone has already derived, so you want to generalize those results. So accessible population means the aggregate of cases that conform to designated inclusion or exclusion criteria and that are accessible as subject of the study. So accessible population. So let us suppose if someone wants to conduct a study on human beings, so one has to visit to that means human beings regarding a particular disease. So one has to visit to hospital, and in hospital you are not able to find your population in direct manner. So you have to put some constraint that which patient can be the part of your study, which patient cannot be part of your study. So for that we incorporate some other terms that is called inclusion and exclusion criteria. So that means it may possible that 100 patients you have monitored in a particular hospital, you have that information regarding them, but some of them are have some prior, or you can say they are also affected with other diseases. So you want to exclude those cases. So that will becomes under exclusion criteria. So you have the proper steps, you have proper things written that this member can be part of my population if they satisfy such things, such criteria, then only be that member can be part of my population. That is called accessible population. Okay, because under neutral condition, under a homogeneous condition, you want to conduct your study. For that, it is very essential thing. So research study settings, the location in which the research is conducted, it could be natural, partial control, or highly controlled. So that depends upon if because some of the studies has been done under some laboratories. In laboratories, some of the studies has been conducted under you can say in societies, right? Or some under some, you can say, proper control situations. So based upon the your objective, you have to decide. That means so whether you're going to conduct your study under natural scenario, under partially controlled scenario, or highly controlled scenario. So the next term is called sample. So this is very important, you can say, component of this research study. And why it is important, I'm going to tell you. So I think all of you know that census has been done. That means although it has not been done after 2011, but the role of census was that they want to collect information from each and every individual in a country, right? So what are the drawbacks of that thing is that it consists time, it consists cost, it consists it means not having accurate information. Sometimes we can say partial information is not, that sometimes we are not able to get accurate information from the audience. So to overcome those drawbacks, so although we know that sample criteria was already there in the literature, but why sample is very important component. So because we take some part of the population. Now, population doesn't mean that we are talking about only about human beings. It can be anything. That means population here means basically we were talking about sample. So sample is means subset of population. So so sample can be considered. So we have to take that sample that is representation of the whole population, and based upon that we conduct our study, and whatever the analysis we got from our sample, we can generalize that output for the whole entire population. So it is very important to have a representative sample here. Okay, a sample whose statistics are highly similar to that of the population from which it is drawn. Okay, that is very important thing. So now how to take sample? So there are different situations under which the sampling criteria will be different. So we will discuss about under this situation one has to follow this thing, under this situation one has to follow this thing. So majorly sampling criteria is divided into probabilistic sampling and non-probabilistic sampling. So under that we have various segments. I will discuss those things one by one. Then the next thing is reliability. So I think most of you have heard about this term reliability before, and those who have prepared questionnaires for this study, they may have heard about this term a lot, reliability. Okay, because when we are collecting the information based upon some questionnaires, so we have various tools, various techniques that help us to identify whatever the questions or questionnaire that we have prepared. Under that, we have incorporated some items. That means the questions are called items, and questionnaire is a collection of items. So whether that questionnaire is relevant or whether it is reliable, okay, or not. So the degree of consistency or accuracy with which a instrument measure the attributes it is designed to measure. For example, I want to conduct a study that what is the average expenditure of students that those who are staying in central universities or those who are staying in IITs, right? So I have prepared one question for that. Okay, so I'm observing their daily routine, that how much coffee, how much, that means what are the major components on which they are spending their money on daily basis. So I have some questions with me, so that collection of questions is called questionnaire. So these questions are called items in statistics, right? So to cross check whether my questionnaire is reliable or not. Okay, reliable means whether what the task that I want to fulfill, that I want to complete with using this questionnaire, whether it is that questions is able to take care of those things or not. So that is called degree of consistency or accuracy. And what instrument that we using, that means we using those questions to measure my objective questions. Okay, so the validity means the degree to which an instrument measures whether it is intended to measure. So it means, so what are the questions that I have framed to cover up that objective, that what is a monthly expenditure of students, so whether that instrument is valid or not, whether that instrument is able to collect that accurate information out. Because if I'm going to ask you directly how much money you are going to spend on monthly basis, so you are going to say that on average it may be 10,000, can be 5,000, but we are not, even we are not very much sure about that how much money we used to spend on monthly basis. But when I put some question that on daily basis what item you used to eat on daily basis, when you, what is the frequency of, that means how many times you're going to visit to market, how many times you visit go to shopping malls for purchase of your clothes and something. So from all, so I, what I'm doing, I'm segregating your daily activities and I'm incorporating all those things in the questions, and from that I try to get the information that you used to spend such amount of money on buying clothes, you used to spend such amount of money on food, your how much money you're going to spend money on yourself, physical activities, on beautification. So from that I got some idea that this figure represents your monthly expenditure. Okay, so pilot study, why pilot study is very important. So this is very important thing because most of researchers, they used to come to me at the end of the stage. Okay, that means after the collection of data, that now we want to conduct the statistical analysis. So what is the role of pilot study? Pilot study means, so you have prepared a rough, you can say questionnaire. That means now in the questionnaire you have incorporated all those questions or items in which you want to using those items you want to complete your study. But so we have to cross check that whether that questionnaires are good enough, whether those questionnaires are able to identify all the variability present in your you can say respondent. That means that whether that questionnaire is able to take care of all the objective of your research study or not. So what we do is, we tell you that we have to take responses of few students, and after that you have to cross check using statistical tools whether that questionnaire is reliable or not. And if that questionnaire is not reliable, we modify the questionnaire. Okay, we tell you that you have to modify the questionnaire, your questionnaire is not good enough, now you have to either remove or incorporate more questions. If that thing is not done, then it means you are doing the study, if you continue in that manner without modifying your questionnaire, so at the later stage when you complete your study, so you're not able to find good results. Okay, hope this point is clear to all of you why pilot study is very important. So study carried out at the end of planning phase of research in order to explore and test the research elements to make relevant modification research tool and methodology. So now after collecting all the information from the you can say audience or your tools, so what we do, so we have to analyze it. So now analysis is again a very broader area, because you used to come to us with the data set in which missing values are there. Some of the respondent, they denied to give answer to some of the questions, and how to take care of those things. So we have to first clean the data, we have to cross check whether the information that we have incorporated in those, in the data set, that the files used to come to us, whether that is accurate or not. Sometimes some typing typos are there. That means sometimes you want to write down 48, but you used to write down 408. So that hamper the whole data set. So what we have to do is we have to identify such things. We have to identify outliers, and after cleaning the data, after cross-checking each and everything, then only we can implement our advanced statistical tool. And whatever the analysis we got after implementing those statistical tools, we have to explain to you so that you can write down them as per your requirement. Because we know that using statistical tool we got the numbers, okay, but one must be able to interpret those numbers so that audience can understand whatever the analysis that we have done, how that analysis is important for the research part of it. Okay, so method of organizing, sorting and scrutinizing data such that research question can be answered or meaningful inference can be drawn. Hope this point is clear to all of you. So type of research process. Now I'm coming to the broader area, that means in which I'm going to cover what is quantitative research process and what is qualitative research process. As I have already mentioned that under quantification, that means those variables that can be quantified, that comes under quantitative research process. Those you can say variables, or you can say not variables, that items that cannot be quantified. So we can only categorize them based on some criteria. It can be nominal, it can be ordinal, right? So for that we will do qualitative study. So most of you, those are from social background, they used to do thematic analysis, they used to text analysis, and they just try to see that how the responses among the persons, they are different. So what are they want to identify from the text analysis, what are the keywords they use most of time in this study. They construct word cloud. Okay, from the word cloud they got to know that what are the most of the keywords that is used by the respondent in their interview. Okay, so in this steps of quantitative research process, so we have following things to follow. The first is formulation of research problem. That is already clear. You can only proceed further than when we have some research problem that means in your mind, right? Means then determining study objectives. Okay, that is very again important. So we do literature review. Then developing conceptual framework, that how we are going to complete. That means what are the tools, methods we have. Formulating hypothesis and assumptions. So let us suppose if you want to do some quantitative study, like you want to see whether your drug is effective or not. So we have to formulate a hypothesis that there is no significant difference between the drug that you have proposed and that drug that was already in the market. But in the alternative hypothesis, so we say that our drug is this drug is significantly different, and that is more helpful for the curement of the diagnosed person. So we have to formulate such hypotheses, and we have to test those hypotheses using statistical tools and selecting research approach design. I will discuss this thing, that what are the research design we have in the literature, and then specifying the population. Okay, because specification of population is very important. Then only you are going to collect the information and do the analysis. The development tool for data collection, how you are going to collect the information, what are the sampling techniques you are going to implement for the collection of data. So because if most of the studies are related to human beings, then we have to take some ethical clearance. Okay, so for that, establishing ethical consideration, that is also very important. Okay, conducting pilot study, as already discussed with you, we have to see that whatever the tools that you're using, whether that tool is capable or not, we have to see that. Then we have to decide how many samples we are going to take. Then after collecting the sample, data collection will be done. Then we have to prepare the data for the analysis purpose. And after doing the analysis and interpretation of data, we have to write our conclusion and disseminate the research finding. Okay. Sometime at the later stage, we also give some policy recommendation also. So in the qualitative research process, so we identify the research problem again and formulate broad subject study objectives. We again do the following steps: literature review. So now how this thing is qualitative is different from the quantitative. So when we talk about quantitative, so we develop conceptual framework and formulate hypothesis, but this thing generally we don't do in qualitative. So we enter into research setting, selecting research design. Then it is also required to select a sample. That means why we need samples, because our research is related with the collection of responses from the respondent. That means we want to take some interviews. So for that, we also have to determine how many interviews we need. Okay, so for that we have some criteria that we can take the interviews till the time we are not getting different response from the respondent, or sometimes due to some constraint, so we are not able to have very large number of interviewer, okay, from a particular area, from particular population. Okay, so then establishing ethical consideration, because we are using some human information, so we also have to take some ethical consideration. So for the collection of data, which tool we are going to use. After collecting the data, we organize the data for analysis purpose, and then we again do the analysis, then we again disseminate the research find. So the steps varies based upon the research process, whether you are following quantitative or qualitative research. Okay, so how now I'm going to give you a brief about each and every step that we have discussed earlier. A research problem is a enigmatic troubling area or topic which needs an inquiry to get better understanding. Okay, our ultimate solution in quantitative studies, problem statement has 6 components. So the first is relevance of the study, that is already thing that is clear to you. Title of study, operational definition of the variable. Operational definition, as already discussed with you, which variable perform which task. Objective of the study, that what is the objective of a study. Delimitation of the study is shifting from general to specific area. Okay, because sometimes we want that we can't develop a drug that is applicable for all the diseases. We have to can say come from general to specific area. That is, suppose if you want to develop a drug for some particular type of disease like cancer, and now cancer, there are further some categories like which cancer you want to treat. So that's why we have to come from general to specific area. Scope and limitation of the study, that is also again important topic related to research problems. So sources of research problems. So what are the sources? Personal experience, practical experience. Okay, personal experience, that you are very good in some area and you have an idea that how to resolve this problem. So that is from your personal experience. Practical experience also related to that. Critical appraisal of literature. So you, while conducting a very strong literature review, right, you got some idea that this thing is not taught by anyone, so you got some idea from that. So previous research, someone has done some research and we want to extend that one. Existing theory, social issues, you can develop a research problem related to social issues also. Brainstorming, discussing with some other good persons. Intuition, folklores, exposure to field situation, consultation with experts. So sometimes it can be from outside, you got some idea. It's from sometimes you got some idea from particular time period, and that consists of less cost, requirement of less equipment and supplies, administration support, requirement of less administration support, researchers competence, that is very important. Ethical consideration one has to keep in mind, and it should be solvable or researchable. Okay, so we should not have to design such research problem cannot be solved, right? So formulation research problem, under that selection of research area. Okay, so as already discussed with you, that formulation research problem begins with selection of a broad research topic from personal experience, literature review, previous research and theory in our research. Okay, so that, and again the important thing is reviewing literature and theories. So literature is reviewed to know what is already been done in the selected area of research. Okay, delimiting the research topics, that means we have to come from general research area to specific topic of research to conduct a study. So evaluating the research problem. So researcher is clear about the specific research problem. Okay, next the researcher problem must be carefully evaluated for its significance, right? Then formulating final statement of research problem, that is also very important. Then it means that the researcher must be able to formulate a final statement. That means what are the findings we got. Okay, one can easily make a statement for that. So what are the characteristics of research objectives? So it should be specific, it should be measurable, it should be attainable, okay, and realistic and time bounded. Because if you're not able to complete the task within a particular time period, so it may be happened that the research that was significant 5 years earlier, but now it is not significant. So that's why it is called, it must be time bounded. So in the precise, we call it SMART. That is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time. Okay, research objective should be relevant. Okay, feasible, as already discussed, that it should be feasible in terms of time, cost, logical, observable, unequivocal, and measurable. So unequivocal means unambiguous, right? It should be, there should be no any other can say that should be no any confusing statement. One has to be very much specific that I want to do this thing. So objective is a purpose that can be reasonable, achieved with this expected time frame and with the available resource. Okay, the objective of research project summarize what is to be achieved by the study. Okay, so it must be there are these are the characteristics of research objective. One has to keep those things in mind, and based upon that, one has to write down the research objective. So research objective are the specific accomplishment the research hope to achieve by the study. Okay, the objective can include obtaining answer to research questions or testing the research hypothesis. Okay, because as already discussed that based on the objective we frame our hypothesis, and if we test the hypothesis, and based upon the outcome we write conclusion that based upon the data set whether my hypothesis is satisfied or not satisfied. So again, why we need research objective. So need of research objective, formulation research objective will help a researcher to with clearly defined objective. The researcher can focus on the study that concentrate on the way to achieve it. So research objective help the researcher to how to solve, how to focus on the means problem that on which he wants to work or she wants to work. It helps the researcher to avoid the collection of data which are not strictly necessary for understanding and solving problems. It helps the researcher in formulation of objective the study in clearly defined parts of research. It helps the researcher to facilitate the development of research methodology and to orient the collection, analysis, and interpretation of the data. So how many, what is hypothesis and assumption? As already discussed with you, that hypothesis statement regarding our study. Okay, so there are a few types of hypothesis. I'm going to state them. That means you have to differentiate which hypothesis is. So basically what I want to say that, so let us suppose if you are a student, then you can remember your school days or your college days. Okay, so we have class of, let us suppose 50, right? And most of you are all of you are of the same age, right? Because it may vary that some of your classmates, they may be of younger than you or maybe then older than you. But we have one, it means in your class, we have one very common thing that that if all of you are doing some work, that means if all of the students are having equal IQ, but it is not always possible that all of you have same IQ, but on average, we can say that we have common IQ. So we can see that it means expenditure habits of all the students in your class. Although there are some outliers also, that means there are very rich students, it may possible in your class. But if you exclude those things, but you can see that most of the, so example that I want to construct in front of you, that if you observe that the most of the student in your college days or your school level, they used to spend a specific amount of money that is equivalent among all the students, except some cases. So if the majority of these 50 students, that means among 40 students are such that they are spending the same amount of money on daily basis or on monthly basis, then we can say that there is less variation is there, right? And if there are more students among these 50 students, like 20 students, they used to spend a lot. Okay, so among these remaining students, it means if 20 are doing, they are doing a lot of they're spending a lot of money on monthly basis. There are 10 students whose expenditure is normal, and remaining one is 20 students, they are very spending very less. So you can observe that if I give a figure that 500 rupees or 1500 rupees is the expenditure they used to do on weekly basis. So there are few students, there are 20 students who used to spend 3000 rupees in 1 week, and there are 10 students who used to spend only 500. So now you can see that on average, if I'm getting 1500 value, but there are there are 10 students whose expenditure is 500, and there are 20 students whose expenditure is 3000. So I can't say that 1500 is the representative value among this whole 50 class students, right? So in that case, variation will be high. Okay, if among these 50 students, 40 students, they have expenditure of 1500, and only 10 students are there, they used to spend either 2000 rupees or 1000 rupees. Okay, the mean average is close to 1500 in that case. Okay, but here, although the average is coming as 1500, but the variation will be very high. So in that case, it is required that we need more samples for completing our study. The desired level of confidence that the estimate is within a given margin of value for the population. So there is one term that is called margin of error. Basically, so let us suppose while conducting a study, how much margin we want to incorporate. That means that based upon our study, that how much error we are going to accept in our study. That means we are saying that maybe in our study we have such type of errors. So how much error we are going to say that with this error, I want to complete this study, and based upon that, I want to determine my sample size. Okay, so I'm going to this calculator, so that will help you to get more understanding because we have less time now. So as already discussed earlier, confidence level means that how much confident we want to say that our true population, that true parameter lie within that interval. So population parameter means here is that I'm going to say that 1500 is the monthly expenditure of 50 students in a class. So I want to say that this is with 95% confidence. I want to say that 1500 is the weekly expenditure of students of 50 members, in which we have 50 members. And in my study, I uh, I also accept that while conducting the study, there must be some errors are there. So I'm saying that 5% error is acceptable in my study. So if I'm going to say, because this is for population proportion, so in the population proportion, we can only say that with some confidence in terms of 0 to 1. Okay. So if we want to give some specific values for that, we have to use different calculators. So here the calculator is given for population proportion. So here I'm going to say that I'm only say that 50% persons are spending this amount and 50% they are not spending this amount. Okay. And because I know that my class will consist of 50 sample size. So now I want to calculate. So I have to observe sample of size 45 because I'm not sure about population size. If I'm very much sure about population size, that 20% chances are there that they used to, 80% chances are there that they used to spend this amount of money, then you can see that their sample size will be changed. Are you getting some idea what I want to convey here is? So based upon this population proportion, okay, and this margin of error, confidence level, your sample size will change, and who will determine that which value we have to take. So that is based upon the literature review. Because if your study is very sensitive, that means if you are developing new drug, so in that case we are not going to take this very high, you can say, margin of error, and we have to be very much confident whatever drug that we are proposing, that should be good enough, and whether that thing is relevant for the public or not. Okay, and in that case we have to take more sample size. Okay, although the sample size is not relevant practical, but if you want to conduct a very good research, so in that case we have to go for more sample size, otherwise it will be not good one. So any doubt? So basically I have completed my presentation, so now I'm giving you 10 or 15 minutes for discussion. Hello.
Is there any query from participant?
Because I'm not very aware about that, whether all of you are aware about mathematical symbols and other things. Otherwise, I can incorporate more mathematical things. So I want to keep this presentation as simple as possible.
Any queries from the participants? If anyone have any query, then kindly ask or you can write in the chat box. I think there is no queries. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Your presentation was received very well by our audience. It will be very helpful in enhancing our research skills further. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dear participants,